Hey, today is a day about videos about drawing, but we're not actually going to be drawing because I've drawn all morning. And I want to explain the concept that goes behind setting up a drawing. So, a drawing is kind of the last step. And when you have a drawing, you decide if you're going to shade it, color it in, and go on with it. I like to think about it like there's a break point, and that before drawing, there's a whole bunch of things that you can do to set up your drawing. And so for me, that is always going to be this. These are always the steps. And this has actually been redone, and I've got a new one, and I want to put it out because I'm constantly refining this because I'm finding it works every time I teach this way. It helps so much. So I'm sharing my screen right now. And I wanted to look at candles. Candles are something that is a difficult thing to draw. And part of what you're seeing right here is the breakdown between color and black and white. Because anytime you draw anything, you are telling a story. And candles aren't as exciting in black and white because we rely on all that color to make the excitement. But in order to understand how to do the color and how to get proficient at color, it's really important to understand what you're actually looking at. I don't want you to get a headache here, but I'm going to zoom through this to here. So when you're looking at candles and flames, I used a blender, I used an eraser, I used HB and an 8B. And what I did was the things that I know, there's a wick, there's a candle, there's a flame. And those are the only things I know about a candle. And the only thing that you have going for you in black and white is this gradient scale. So I know I have to have black because if my background isn't black, this says candle, and you understand probably that this is a candle. But what really makes the image start to move, start to pop, start to tell a story is the fact that it's in a dark background. That's what really makes a candle stand out. But when you're first sketching, it's a great idea to start to understand the shapes that you're seeing first. So I drew this one out first. Then I went to this, and I'm looking at the symmetricalness of a candle. And then I start looking up what are the characteristics of a flame? How do we conceptualize it in words, not just in an actual drawing, but what makes up a candle? So here, it's actually a heat propagated form. So, and if you think about that, you have that wick, it's got heat, and the radiance of that heat is a mathematical equation that comes out. And so hottest, and it slowly cools. So with that information as an artist, that tells you, okay, there's some sort of gradient here, whether it's a mathematical gradient of numbers or whether it's a color gradient. It's something that can be done with a gradient scale. So there's that. There's also the fact that it's fluid dynamics. So that right there tells you that there's some sort of motion. It's a fluid. And if you can draw water or understand water, the concepts that apply in fluid and water are also going to apply to a flame. So there's all these clues that you can get ahead of time. I haven't even touched the paper yet. I did that one drawing of a candle, but already I understand this. So I want to go back to looking at this again. And so the next thing was, okay, I know that I've got that fluidness going for me. So I can bring everything I know about water and drawing water into play. And I also know that I have those three shapes. The other thing I know, and this is completely dependent on how many party light candle parties you attended, you draw the wick the way you would light it. And I know, because of party light, believe me, I know, trim that wick. So you pick the wick length. All right, that wasn't that funny, but all right, we're beginning to ask questions here. So the orientation, it's going to be upright, and the division of space, the distribution is going to be symmetrical because a flame is symmetrical. So then I'm thinking about shape, just basic shapes, not form yet. So I'm thinking inverted or like a teardrop shape, right? Light source and patterns. Those are the things that I go to regardless of what I'm drawing. And this is the very basic, and I put the color in, and I've got Tuscan red to remind myself that I can use that as a darker color up there. But this is kind of what the color structure of a candle looks like. It's a symbolic drawing with a lot more detail than just a symbolic drawing. Obviously, it's got color information. It's got hints you can see in here. Here's that flame core. This is that heat propagate form. So you have the dark red, an orange, and a yellow. So that makes a nice gradient blend. Down here, there's blue. Blue says heat like nothing else, especially in a candle. You look and you see that blue at the bottom. And the ending of it, as the heat goes away, the intensity of the heat, and if you've ever run your hand over a candle, you can feel that heat is actually way up there. It's not so much through it. The trick is you can put your finger through it, right? And it doesn't burn you. But up at that tip, it's hot. So when you notice that, hot to you is saying hot is here, and it's getting cooler as it goes here. And then hot is up here and it cools as it comes down. The candle itself, you'd think this wasn't important, but actually this is one of the most important parts, because when you get down to here, the information that I give you on the candle itself, if I can make you buy that there's an actual candle, you're going to believe my flame much more than you would if I just kind of left this unfinished. So when I start this out, my orientation, I want it tall and thin because I want to capture that candle flame way up here and give it the ability to sit in the frame. If I ended my picture right here, it's too soon. This black needs to go up further. So you want to kind of plan that out. How much candle do you want to show? Or is the flame the important? Maybe a little wider here. But then you go to the shapes, and that's the center section. There's a teardrop, there's a line, and there's a long rectangle. They're shapes, they're not a form, but that gives you that symmetrical look very quickly. We did distribution of space, it's right in the middle. You could certainly offset it, but for this one I did center. Light source, that's problematic, right? Because the candle itself is the light source. So all you can do is you can say, all right, I can rely on 5 patterns to help me, because light source isn't something I can do from the outside. I can do it though in terms of gradients, and the gradients are dark, medium, light, red, orange, yellow, or in the grayscale, I had to go and figure out, how do I get, this is the most important, the mid-tone. So in the picture in color, that would be our orange, and it actually shows up as the least amount of color in here. So in the color picture, the colors really override what is the most important part of this pattern of dark, medium, and light. When we go back and look at this picture, you can see that the grayscale here, excruciatingly important, because I'm telling you a whole different story here with a different grade scale. This candle is out. It's not a flame. I didn't make this wick or the candle as important because I wanted this to be important, that you're seeing that, okay, it's just blown out, versus this or this or this at different phases of, this is a lot fatter. The light fades up here, trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to do this important part of that middle. So that's the most important thing for me in anything, is figuring out what your gradient blend is. And you're really only going to be able to do that if you take a color picture and get rid of that color information. Put the black and white there and try and figure out, all right, you have 3 colors now. You have black and white. Those are kind of obvious, but how do you make that range, that palette in the center of all the grays? Because those grays are what translate to your colors. And if you don't understand how to get them in the 3 dark, medium, and light, it's going to be really hard to read that into colors. So when you break it down into what your orientation, the distribution of space, where your light source is, what you're going to, I'm so good at this yet because it's so new to me, putting the shapes in, and then where those patterns fall, all that information as you gather it. For instance, in this, there isn't a great light source because you're drawing the light source itself. So you can't count on light source to give you information. You have to go to the other elements. And all this for me is far before you ever draw anything. These are the studies that get done. This is the understanding that needs to happen. But when you understand that, once you understand it fluidly in a liquid, that translates to a flame. And so you're learning this technique, but it's a global technique. And that's, I think for me, what I love most about teaching is once you understand the concepts in graphite or in black and white, it's a lot easier to translate all of it into color, because you can bridge the graphite with Verithens and then bridge the Verithens into Prismacolor pencils. So I think that works well. And I'm thinking that I'm almost out of coffee, so I have to go get more. It's late and I got to go teach class, but I wanted to get that up today, and I will. Ciao.